What if the Duchess of Sussex, the woman who once dazzled Hollywood, conquered the British monarchy and positioned herself as a global humanitarian, was suddenly dragged into the harshest spotlight of all? What if, instead of glamour and applause, her name was being linked to flashing blue lights, whispered accusations, and the bitter taste of betrayal? And what if that downfall wasn't whispered behind palace gates or splashed across tabloids as rumors, but documented by investigators, sealed by prosecutors, and cemented in the form of a humiliating arrest? That is exactly the chilling picture unfolding right now. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The world woke up to headlines that no one thought possible. Meghan Markle, the Duchess who fled the royal family to pursue freedom and authenticity, accused of orchestrating a financial scandal involving secret offshore accounts and millions of dollars hidden in places most of us only hear about in thrillers. Arrested, questioned, stripped of the carefully crafted narrative she spent years building. And yet, this isn't just about one woman's alleged crime. This is about power, money, betrayal, and the price of ambition. The first question that should haunt us is simple. How did we get here? Let's pause and reflect. Only a few short years ago, Meghan Markle was celebrated as a groundbreaking figure, an American actress who married into one of the oldest and most secretive dynasties in the world. She became the symbol of modern change for the monarchy, the fresh face who promised diversity, feminism, and progress. Remember the wedding watched by billions? The choir, the tears, the cheers, the promise that history was shifting? And yet, beneath that fairy tale glow, there were already cracks. Conflicts with the palace, whispers of diva behavior, rumors about staff walking out, scandals tied to her estranged family. But few could have predicted that the woman once hailed as a royal disruptor would face something so much darker, something that would blur the line between fairy tale and financial fraud. So why now? Why are these accusations surfacing at this particular moment? Some argue it's karmic timing. Others believe it's politically orchestrated, perhaps by powerful figures who see Meghan and Harry as dangerous loose cannons. And still others whisper that this was inevitable, that the signs were always there if people had cared to look. But let's strip away the speculation and focus on the facts we know. Reports suggest that investigators uncovered a network of offshore accounts linked directly to Meghan. Hidden millions, routed through shell companies and tax havens. Documents, transactions, names, each discovery more shocking than the last. And here's the twist. She allegedly wasn't alone. Let me ask you, have you ever wondered why some of the world's most powerful people use offshore accounts? They're not always illegal. But when secrecy replaces transparency, suspicion is born. And when suspicion mixes with ambition, the stage is set for scandal. But here's where it becomes even more heartbreaking. Meghan's carefully cultivated public image, the compassionate humanitarian, the champion of women's rights, the advocate for the voiceless, now stands in stark contradiction to these accusations. Imagine hearing speeches about justice, while investigators allege millions were hidden from it. Imagine a figure who lectured the world on truth, now accused of burying the truth behind layers of secrecy. Is it irony, hypocrisy, or a calculated mask finally slipping? The middle of this story is where the real intrigue lies. Because the arrest itself, those flashing lights, the paparazzi frenzy, wasn't just a legal procedure. It was a public unmasking. Neighbors watched. Cameras rolled. Commentators scrambled to make sense of what was happening. And through it all, Meghan's image crumbled in real time. But the arrest is just the beginning. Behind it lies betrayal, secrecy, and power struggles at the highest levels. Some say someone close to her tipped off investigators. Others whisper the palace knew far more than they let on. Could it be possible that a royal hand pushed this scandal into the light? Or was it all Meghan's own ambition catching up with her? Ask yourself this. How far would someone go to protect their reputation, their wealth, their legacy? And what happens when the one weapon they rely on, public sympathy, turns against them? Because here's the sting. This story isn't just about Meghan Markle being accused of fraud. It's about the collapse of a narrative she spent years selling to the world. A narrative of victimhood, empowerment, and liberation. A narrative that millions believed, defended, and even fought for. And now, we're left with a chilling contradiction. Was it all smoke and mirrors? Or is Meghan herself a victim of a setup, caught in a larger game she never understood? As the cameras clicked and the news spread, the world was left holding its breath. Some people cheered, claiming justice was finally being served. Others gasped, unable to reconcile the woman they admired with the woman being led into questioning. And yet, the cruelest part of this saga is that the real bombshell wasn't the arrest. No, the arrest was only the opening act. Because what came next, what investigators uncovered in those accounts, and whose names appeared alongside Meghan's, would shake not only her world, but the very foundations of the monarchy, Hollywood, and international politics. The arrest was just the beginning. The betrayal, the conspiracies, the shocking alliances. That's where the real story begins. And here's the cliffhanger I'll leave you with. What if the person who exposed Meghan wasn't her enemy, but someone closer than she ever imagined? Someone she trusted. Someone she loved. Because that, dear viewers, is the twist that changes everything. It began with flashing blue lights cutting through the California night. The kind of lights that make neighbors peek through curtains, that make reporters race to their keyboards, that make the world stop and ask, who is being taken away? But this wasn't just anyone. This wasn't an anonymous billionaire caught in some faceless scandal. No, this was Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, a woman who once walked hand in hand with royalty and stood at the altar of Windsor Castle in a gown worth more than most of us will ever earn in a lifetime. And now, sirens, officers, the pounding on the door. The scene looked less like a royal fairy tale and more like the climax of a true crime documentary. Can you picture it? The long driveway, the mansion bathed in half-light, the gates pulled back as law enforcement vehicles rolled inside. Paparazzi lenses already clicking, helicopters circling overhead. In that moment, Meghan wasn't the glamorous figure we've seen in carefully curated Netflix specials or magazine spreads. She was a suspect, an accused fraudster, a woman about to face the unthinkable arrest. The hook is obvious, but the details make it chilling. Eyewitnesses describe the mood as tense, even eerie. Some claim Meghan looked pale, shocked, and caught off guard. Others insist she was combative, insisting she was innocent, demanding to know why she was being treated this way. The cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing every second. But let's stop here and ask the question. How does someone go from royal handshakes with world leaders to standing in the glare of police lights? How do you fall from palaces to police stations? The middle of this story, the arrest itself, wasn't just about law enforcement procedure. It was a spectacle, the kind of moment where truth and performance blur together. For the police, it was routine, an arrest warrant executed, a suspect taken into custody. For the public, it was theater, the once beloved Duchess now playing the role of alleged criminal. Neighbors spoke later about the surreal scene. One whispered, "It was like watching a movie, but this was real." Another claimed that Meghan was escorted out in a coat hastily thrown over nightwear, her hair undone, her expression a mixture of fury and disbelief. Imagine the humiliation for a woman who had once controlled every angle of her public image. Imagine the shock of realizing that, for once, she could not dictate the story. And then Harry. Reports differ, but some allege that Harry was there, stunned, pleading, caught between protecting his wife and understanding the gravity of the charges. Did he know? Was he blindsided? Or was this a storm he had feared for months? What makes this scene more heartbreaking is how it echoes history. Royals, scandals, police. This isn't the first time the House of Windsor has faced public disgrace. Think of Edward VIII, forced to abdicate for love. Think of Princess Margaret, trapped in tabloid scandal. Think of Prince Andrew, humiliated by allegations that will haunt him forever. And now, Meghan joins that tragic list, but with something far darker, financial fraud accusations tied to international investigations. Do you see the irony? Meghan and Harry left the monarchy claiming they wanted freedom from scrutiny, independence, control over their lives. Yet here they were, caught in the harshest spotlight of all. Not the spotlight of tabloids, but of law enforcement. Not whispers of family drama, but hard accusations of fraud, tax evasion, secrecy. And here's where the emotional beats hit hardest. Meghan had always portrayed herself as the woman fighting against oppression, the victim of institutional cruelty, the voice silenced by power. But in that moment, as she was escorted away, she wasn't the victim in the narrative anymore. She was the accused. And the world, once divided in sympathy, was now divided in judgment. But let's take it further. Because the arrest scene itself raises chilling questions. Who tipped off the authorities? How did investigators track down the accounts? Was Meghan caught off guard because she never believed anyone could get close enough to prove it? And here's where the contradictions deepen. Some accounts say Meghan remained silent, refusing to answer questions. Others say she shouted her innocence, calling it a setup orchestrated by enemies in Britain. Can you imagine the chaos in that driveway? Police trying to maintain order, paparazzi yelling questions, neighbors whispering, Harry pleading, Meghan protesting? And yet, through the chaos, the truth is undeniable. An arrest happened. Charges were filed. A narrative that once seemed untouchable crumbled in real time. The build-up from this moment is enormous, because the arrest was not an ending. It was the beginning of a far more complicated web. The flashing lights symbolized not just humiliation, but exposure. Every secret, every hidden account, every betrayal dragged into the light. Now, here's where I want to leave you. Because the arrest, dramatic as it was, pales in comparison to what investigators found next. The paperwork, the accounts, the names attached to them. That was the true bombshell. And it wasn't just Meghan's name that appeared. It was someone else's. Someone close. Someone unexpected. Someone whose involvement would change this story from scandal to conspiracy. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. Imagine this. Investigators poring over mountains of documents, late-night strategy meetings, encrypted emails decrypted, offshore servers cracked open like vaults. And there, buried beneath layers of secrecy, names and numbers appear that don't belong. Accounts in the Cayman Islands. Trusts in Bermuda. A web of shell companies stretching across Panama, Switzerland, and Dubai. And right at the center, Meghan Markle. This was no tabloid rumor. No idle palace whisper. These were ledgers, signed forms, transfers that moved millions through shadowy financial channels. The very channels used by oligarchs, corrupt politicians, and disgraced CEOs. Now linked to the Duchess of Sussex, a woman who once lectured the world on transparency, justice, and morality. Can you believe the contradiction? Meghan standing on global stages, speaking of women's empowerment, urging fairness, and yet, if the allegations are true, shuffling money through some of the world's darkest financial corridors. How does that image reconcile? How do her words about truth match these numbers in black and white? The accounts didn't just exist, they told a story. Transfers routed at odd hours. Payments disguised as consulting fees. Money linked to businesses with no products, no employees, nothing but a P.O. box in a tax haven. Offshore accounts aren't illegal on their own, but secrecy at this level almost always means one thing: hiding something. And here's the jaw-dropping twist. Meghan wasn't the only name. Some accounts bore initials that raised more questions than answers. One transfer connected to an HW, leading to speculation about Harry's awareness or involvement. Another linked to someone in Hollywood, a name that stunned investigators when they realized the connection. Suddenly, this wasn't just a personal scandal. It was an international one. Let me ask you this. How often have we seen powerful figures fall because of financial secrets? Think Panama Papers. Think Enron. Think politicians exposed for funneling money through shell companies. And now, Meghan Markle. The buildup was relentless. News outlets scrambled to verify leaks. Financial experts went on air, explaining the maze of offshore secrecy. Some claimed the accounts stretched back years, even before Meghan married into the royal family. Could this mean her ambition had always been tied to money and power? Or did the scandal grow only after her escape from palace life, as desperation and lavish spending demanded hidden reserves? And here's where it cuts deep. These revelations didn't just threaten Meghan's image. They undermined the entire brand of Meghan and Harry. Remember their global deals? Netflix, Spotify, multi-million-dollar speeches. All justified as independent sources of income after leaving royal duties. But if investigators found millions stashed away offshore, what does that say? Were those deals about independence, or a cover for something darker? The emotional irony is staggering. Meghan and Harry cried out against the monarchy's lack of financial support, against being cut off. They painted themselves as victims forced to fend for themselves. But now, allegations suggest Meghan had millions tucked away all along. If true, then the cries of hardship were not only exaggerated, they were calculated. And let's not forget the royal undertone. The Windsors themselves are no strangers to financial secrecy. For centuries, royal wealth has been hidden, protected, and sometimes scandalized. But for Meghan, the outsider, to be caught in this kind of scandal, it fed right into the narrative her critics had warned about. Picture the headlines: Meghan, the manipulator. From Duchess to fraudster. The royal rebel exposed. Overnight, she went from a figure of sympathy to one of suspicion. And the offshore accounts became the symbol of that fall. Now, here's the question you need to wrestle with. Was Meghan the mastermind? Or was she a pawn in a much bigger game? Because some investigators believe she didn't open those accounts herself. Instead, she may have been used as the face, the shield, while more powerful figures hid behind her image. Could it be that Meghan wasn't the architect, but the decoy? That brings us to betrayal. Because if she wasn't acting alone, then someone close to her knew. Someone trusted. Someone who may have helped set up the accounts, then later turned on her. And this is where the tension boils over. Whispers suggest that one of the very people Meghan confided in, an ally she believed would protect her, was the one who handed over documents to investigators. Betrayal at the highest level. So, the accounts weren't just a financial scandal. They were a smoking gun that pointed to treachery inside Meghan's own circle. And here's the cliffhanger. One of those offshore accounts carried a name so shocking, so closely tied to Meghan's private world, that when investigators revealed it, jaws dropped across the room. It wasn't just a banker. It wasn't just a shell company. It was someone who had once shared her most intimate secrets. But who was it? And why would they turn on her now? Betrayal. The word itself stings like a blade. And in Meghan Markle's case, betrayal may have been the hidden detonator that blew this entire scandal wide open. Think about it. Financial scandals of this magnitude rarely explode without someone on the inside pulling the trigger. Offshore accounts, encrypted transfers, secret signatures, those don't just magically land in the hands of investigators. No, someone close to Meghan handed them over. Someone she trusted. Someone who knew enough to pierce the armor she thought would keep her safe. But here's the chilling question. Who was it? Was it a disgruntled staffer, tired of being mistreated and discarded? A friend turned enemy after years of being sidelined? Or could it have been someone even closer? A family member, perhaps, or even Harry himself, caught in an impossible moral bind? Let's start with the staff. Over the years, Meghan has been accused of creating a toxic work environment, with aides resigning one after the other. Remember the bullying allegations lodged against her during her time at Kensington Palace? Some former staff claimed she was manipulative, controlling, even cruel behind closed doors. If one of those ex-staffers held on to documents, emails, or suspicious financial details, they could have been the ones to blow the whistle. But it's not just staff. Meghan's own family has long been fractured. Her father, Thomas Markle, her half-sister, Samantha, both of them publicly critical of her. Could someone in her estranged family have gotten hold of damning evidence and passed it to the press or investigators as payback? Yet, the whispers get darker. Some sources suggest the betrayal came not from the outside, but from within her closest circle, an ally she leaned on in her darkest moments. Someone who knew her secrets, who watched her craft her narrative, who may have even helped orchestrate some of the financial maneuvers. And then, at the crucial moment, turned. The emotional weight of betrayal is devastating. Meghan, who always painted herself as the victim of betrayal, by the palace, by the press, by her family, now faced the most dangerous betrayal of all. One that cut not her reputation, but her freedom. Ask yourself this. How does it feel when the person you trust most becomes the person who destroys you? How does it feel to realize the confidences you shared in private are now weapons in someone else's hands? And here's where Harry enters the picture. Could it be that Harry himself was torn apart by loyalty and morality? Imagine being Harry, watching your wife accused of crimes, knowing the truth behind the scenes, knowing your children's futures are at stake. Do you stand by her no matter what? Or do you cooperate quietly with investigators to protect yourself and the monarchy's legacy? Some speculate that Harry may have unintentionally contributed to Meghan's downfall. Maybe he didn't directly hand over documents, but perhaps he confided in someone, shared too much with a friend or advisor, who then passed the information along. Maybe his own doubts, his visible cracks in public appearances, hinted to investigators where to look. But let's not forget, betrayal isn't always about family or spouses. Hollywood circles can be vicious. Meghan, once embraced by celebrities like Serena Williams, Oprah Winfrey, and Tyler Perry, has seen some of those friendships cool in recent years. Could a powerful celebrity confidant have decided Meghan was a liability? Could they have chosen to protect their own brand by feeding investigators information? The buildup of this betrayal theme is haunting because it forces us to question everything Meghan built. Her speeches about loyalty, her documentaries about speaking truth to power, her brand built on resilience. All of it collapses when you realize that behind the curtain, she may have been surrounded by people waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And the irony? Meghan herself has often been accused of betrayal, of betraying the monarchy, betraying friends, betraying family ties for ambition. Now, the cycle has turned back on her. One insider account claims Meghan was utterly blindsided when she learned who betrayed her. Imagine the moment, sitting in a cold interview room, being shown documents, financial transfers, account details, all stamped with evidence trails she thought were hidden forever, and then being told exactly who delivered those papers into the hands of investigators. Her reaction, reportedly, was disbelief, followed by fury. She allegedly shouted, "They wouldn't dare," but they did. And the betrayal cut deeper than any criticism she'd faced before. Because this wasn't just betrayal, it was annihilation. And here's the cliffhanger. When the truth of the betrayal finally came out, it wasn't just a staffer, or a celebrity, or a distant relative. No, the traitor was someone who had once been Meghan's shield, her protector, her confidant in both Hollywood and royal life. Someone she never imagined would break. And the reason they did it? Not for money, not for fame, but for survival. In the grand halls of Buckingham Palace, news travels faster than the gilded clocks can tick. And when the announcement came, Meghan Markle arrested on suspicion of financial fraud, the whispers began before the official briefings had even finished. Imagine the scene. Aides rushing between offices, phones buzzing with urgent calls, senior royals cloistered in private rooms, deciding not just what to say, but what not to say. For King Charles, the scandal was a catastrophe wrapped in grim vindication. Here was the woman who had accused the monarchy of cruelty, who had painted the family as villains on global television, now being paraded as a suspect in one of the most humiliating fraud cases of the century. To him, it wasn't just personal, it was institutional. A monarchy built on centuries of power and perception could not afford to be tainted by an American duchess turned disgrace. Reports suggest Charles's immediate reaction was fury. Not the quiet, composed kingly response that cameras often capture, but genuine, unrestrained anger behind palace walls. He allegedly demanded to know how much of this scandal could be tied back to the crown. Was the monarchy at risk of exposure by association? His aides scrambled, some suggesting swift distancing, others urging silence. But the conclusion was inevitable. The palace would not stand by Meghan this time. And what about Prince William? The future king, always measured, always calculated. Insiders claim he was stone-faced when briefed. He didn't rage like his father. He didn't flinch. He simply absorbed the information, processing it with the cold precision of a man who has always understood the monarchy's greatest weapon, survival. To William, Meghan's downfall was both a warning and an opportunity. A warning of how dangerous outsiders could be, and an opportunity to restore public confidence in his path to the throne. He allegedly instructed his team to prepare for questions, but under no circumstances should they utter a word of sympathy for Meghan. The message was clear: Meghan's scandal was Meghan's problem. And then, Kate, the Princess of Wales, forever the poised counterpart to Meghan's chaotic narrative. Can you imagine the irony? While Meghan was being escorted by police under flashing sirens, Kate was captured on camera smiling gracefully at a children's hospital, embodying the perfect royal image. For years, Meghan had compared herself to Kate, accusing the palace of protecting Kate while hanging her out to dry. Now, the comparison cut sharper than ever. Kate, flawless and untouchable. Meghan, accused and exposed. But here's where the tension sharpens. Rumors swirl that behind closed doors, Kate expressed both relief and sadness. Relief that the rivalry which had haunted her image was now over. Meghan had defeated herself. But sadness, too, at what this meant for Harry. Because even as Meghan faced her scandal, Harry remained family. And for Kate, protecting William meant managing Harry's inevitable backlash. Princess, and, ever blunt, was reportedly the least forgiving. Known for her sharp tongue, she allegedly remarked that Meghan's arrest was the ending we all saw coming. Harsh, perhaps, but in Anne's world, loyalty to the monarchy comes before compassion for individuals who threaten it. And let's not forget the courtiers, the so-called men in gray suits, Meghan once accused of orchestrating her misery. For them, this was a vindication years in the making. Meghan had painted them as villains in her Oprah interview, as the faceless bureaucracy that tried to silence her. But now, with her own actions under scrutiny, they stood silently victorious. The system she despised had outlasted her. But the royal reaction wasn't just private. It was strategic. The palace knew the world would demand a statement. And so, carefully, they crafted one. It was brief, measured, and deliberately cold. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex are no longer working members of the royal family. We will not be commenting on this ongoing legal matter. Do you see the irony? When Prince Andrew faced his own scandal, the palace agonized over how to handle the fallout. With Meghan, the answer was swift detachment. They severed the cord, reminding the world that she was no longer one of them. It was a surgical strike, cutting her loose while preserving the monarchy's image. But make no mistake, behind that silence, the family wasn't just relieved. They were watching carefully. Because if investigators dug deep enough, who's to say what else might surface? Could Meghan's offshore accounts intersect with royal finances in ways no one wanted exposed? Could her downfall drag others down with her? Here's where the contradictions bite. The monarchy thrives on secrecy, yet Meghan was accused of hiding secrets of her own. The palace, experts at managing scandal, now watched as Meghan floundered without its machinery to protect her. It was poetic in a brutal way. And the public? They couldn't get enough of it. On one side, Meghan's critics celebrated, calling it karma. On the other, her loyal defenders claimed the palace had orchestrated her downfall, using its vast resources to destroy her once and for all. For the royals, that narrative was dangerous. They had to walk a tightrope, distancing themselves from Meghan while not appearing to have blood on their hands. Now, ask yourself this. Was the palace merely reacting to Meghan's scandal, or were they pulling strings behind the scenes? Did they simply distance themselves, or did they help engineer her exposure? After all, who benefits more from Meghan's collapse than the monarchy she tried to dismantle? And here's the cliffhanger. While the palace publicly washed its hands of Meghan, investigators discovered something shocking. Buried deep in one of the offshore accounts was not just Meghan's name, but a coded reference to an entity linked directly to a royal charity. Suddenly, the question wasn't just how Meghan fell, but whether her scandal might drag the monarchy into the fire with her. Torn. That's the only word that truly fits Prince Harry in this moment. Imagine it. Your wife, the woman you gave up a crown for, is suddenly at the center of a scandal so explosive it threatens to scorch everything in its path. She's not being accused of petty missteps or tabloid-level gossip. No, she's being accused of hiding millions in offshore accounts, facing public arrest, and possibly a criminal trial. And you? You're standing right in the middle, forced to choose between love and loyalty. Picture Harry's face when the blue lights flashed that night. Some witnesses claim he looked broken, not angry. Shocked, not surprised. As though he had always feared this moment, but never dared admit it, even to himself. Because for Harry, this wasn't just Meghan's scandal. It was his life, his reputation, his children's futures, all collapsing in one cruel, irreversible instant. But here's the gut punch. What if Harry knew more than he let on? What if, buried beneath the declarations of innocence, there were documents, signatures, or whispers tying his name, to those offshore accounts? Some investigators claim they found references to HW, a set of initials hard to ignore. Could that stand for Henry Windsor? Could Harry's blind loyalty to Meghan have pulled him into a mess far darker than even he imagined? The emotional weight is crushing. For years, Harry portrayed himself as the man who chose love over duty, the husband willing to sacrifice royal privilege for his wife's happiness. That was his narrative, his redemption arc. But now, that same devotion may be destroying him. Because what do you do when the woman you defended against your own family is suddenly accused of betraying you as well? Think about it. Harry left the monarchy because he believed Meghan was mistreated. He cut ties with his brother, the heir to the throne. He strained his relationship with his father, now the king. He walked away from the very institution that defined his identity. And now, all those bridges burned, where does he stand? Alone, in the shadows of Meghan's scandal, questioning everything. Some reports suggest Harry initially stood firm, insisting Meghan was innocent, even railing against investigators for targeting her. Friends allegedly heard him mutter, "They've been after her from the start." But as evidence mounted, account numbers, hidden transfers, shocking betrayals, the cracks began to show. His once unshakable defense turned into long silences, haunted expressions, and the bitter realization that he couldn't protect her this time. And what about his children? Archie and Lilibet. The irony is suffocating. Harry once said he left royal life to protect them from the trauma he endured as a child. Yet now, they're at risk of growing up with the legacy of their mother's scandal shadowing their every step. Imagine Harry's torment. The images of Diana, chased to her death, colliding with the headlines branding Meghan as a fraudster. Two women he loved. Two women crushed by forces bigger than themselves, yet in entirely different ways. But let's not forget the Shakespearean quality of this tragedy. Harry's role isn't just as Meghan's husband. He's also Charles's son, William's brother, Diana's boy. His loyalty is divided across bloodlines, and each side demands something different. Meghan demands blind love, protection at all costs. His family demands distance, silence, and perhaps, in their hearts, they hope he finally sees Meghan for who they believe she really is. So where does Harry stand? Is he the loyal husband, clinging to the woman he once called his soulmate? Or is he the broken prince, finally realizing the price of rebellion was higher than he ever imagined? And here's where it twists deeper. Because according to some insiders, Harry stumbled across documents, evidence hidden in plain sight, that suggested Meghan hadn't been entirely truthful with him. Numbers that didn't add up. Transactions she hadn't explained. Conversations she'd brushed off as business. Imagine the horror of realizing your wife, the woman you gave up everything for, might have kept you in the dark. Can you picture that moment? Harry sitting alone, reading, rereading, hands trembling, heart racing. The man who once shouted at the world to protect his wife, now staring at proof that she may have betrayed him. And here's the cliffhanger. The discovery that shook him most wasn't just about Meghan. No, it was what those documents implied about him. His own name, his own signature, woven into a web of offshore secrecy. If that's true, Harry isn't just the loyal husband standing by an accused wife. He may be a co-defendant waiting to be named. And that possibility changes everything. Picture a spider's web. Fine threads stretched across continents, invisible until the light hits them. And then, suddenly, the entire structure reveals itself. That's what investigators uncovered when they dug into Meghan Markle's alleged financial dealings. A secret network of offshore accounts, layered shell companies, and hidden trusts that span the globe. At first, it looked like a single account, just one suspicious transfer linked to Meghan's name. But as experts followed the money trail, one thread led to another. A payment in the Cayman Islands led to a trust in Bermuda. That trust tied back to a consultancy firm in Panama. That firm was connected to a Swiss account with millions sitting quietly untouched. And each time investigators thought they had reached the end, another thread appeared. It wasn't just one account, it was an entire system. Think about it. Most people struggle to balance a single checking account. But here, we're talking about an elaborate financial labyrinth, the kind used by oligarchs, cartel leaders, and corrupt politicians. Why would Meghan Markle, a woman with Netflix deals, speaking tours, and book contracts, need this? What was she hiding? And here's where the irony stings. Meghan had built her brand on transparency, on living authentically, on calling out the secrecy of the royal family. Yet here she was, accused of weaving a secrecy so deep it rivaled the very institution she condemned. The middle of this story is where the shockwaves spread. Investigators uncovered not only Meghan's alleged accounts, but the names of others tied to them. Hollywood connections, business partners, even whispers of politicians with links to the same financial ecosystem. Suddenly, the narrative shifted. Was Meghan the mastermind, or just a player in a much bigger scheme? And the numbers weren't small. Millions, perhaps tens of millions, routed through accounts that had no legitimate business purpose. Some transfers were labeled as consulting fees or media investments, but there were no consulting projects, no media companies, just empty shells. Let's pause and ask a question directly. What would drive someone like Meghan to create such a network? Was it greed? Was it paranoia? Or was it fear of losing everything if the spotlight faded? The buildup grows heavier when you look at timing. Some of the earliest accounts allegedly date back before Meghan married into the royal family, back to her Hollywood years. Could it be that the seeds of this scandal were planted long before Harry entered the picture? Or did the network expand only after Megxit, when Meghan and Harry found themselves desperate to fund the lifestyle they had envisioned outside the crown? And what about Harry? Remember the initials HW tied to some transactions? Investigators couldn't ignore that possibility. If true, it meant Harry wasn't just standing by Meghan. He was potentially entangled himself. The loyal husband may have unknowingly become a participant in the very network designed to hide money. Now, think of the betrayal factor again. To build such a system, Meghan had to trust people, accountants, financial managers, lawyers. And trust is a fragile thing. What if one of them turned? What if the person who helped design this secret empire later decided to hand it all over to investigators? That would explain the detailed leaks, the precision of the documents, the shocking clarity of the evidence. The emotional punch is this. Meghan once preached independence and freedom from the monarchy. She claimed she was silenced and controlled. And yet, these offshore accounts paint a picture not of a silenced victim, but of a woman allegedly working in shadows, hiding her own truths from the world, even from those closest to her. And here's where the contradictions deepen. Meghan spoke often about charity, about giving back, about humanitarian causes. But investigators allege that some of the same accounts linked to her were receiving money meant for charitable initiatives. If true, this wouldn't just be fraud. It would be betrayal on a moral level. To preach generosity while diverting funds into hidden accounts is the kind of revelation that turns public opinion viciously against you. Now imagine the headlines. Duchess of Deception. Charity to corruption. Royal rebels secret millions. The media frenzy wasn't just about the scandal. It was about the symbolism. Meghan had positioned herself as the voice of compassion. Now, she was accused of becoming the opposite. And here's where the real chill sets in. Because investigators weren't just looking at Meghan. They began to question whether this network connected to others, whether her accounts were part of a much larger machine involving global elites. Could Meghan have been a convenient face, a glamorous figure used to shield bigger players behind the curtain? Or was she orchestrating it all, playing the role of both duchess and dealer in a financial game most of us can barely comprehend? Either way, the truth was devastating. The secret network wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was deliberate, calculated, and sprawling. And the cliffhanger? Among the offshore accounts, investigators stumbled across a transaction tied not to Meghan, not to Harry, but to a figure linked directly to the British royal household. If true, Meghan's scandal wasn't just hers anymore. It had the power to drag the monarchy itself into the mud. The news hit Hollywood like a bomb. The glitzy circles Meghan once called home, red carpets, private jets, soirees with A-listers, suddenly recoiled as though she were radioactive. Imagine the irony. The same celebrities who once lined up to be photographed with her, the same moguls who toasted her bravery in leaving the monarchy, now scrambling to delete photos, cancel appearances, and issue quiet statements through publicists distancing themselves from the Duchess in disgrace. The mini-hook is this: how quickly loyalty in Hollywood can turn to silence, and silence into betrayal. Think back. Meghan's Rolodex had glittered with names like Oprah Winfrey, Serena Williams, Tyler Perry, George, and Amal Clooney. These weren't casual acquaintances. They were her defenders, her allies, the ones who gave her platforms when she claimed the palace silenced her. But in the wake of her arrest, those voices grew faint. Serena posted inspirational quotes, but never mentioned Meghan. Oprah, who had once staged the explosive interview that rocked the monarchy, remained conspicuously quiet. Tyler Perry, who famously lent Meghan and Harry his mansion as a safe haven, made no comment at all. Can you feel the sting? The woman who once commanded the support of Hollywood's elite now found herself abandoned. The champagne flutes she once clinked were replaced by whispers at private dinners. Did you hear? How much did she hide? Could Harry be involved too? And the whispers weren't just in Hollywood. High society circles in New York, London, and Montecito turned cold. Invitations disappeared. Brand partnerships froze. Charities quietly cut ties, not wanting to be associated with financial scandal. The same society that had once cheered her for escaping royal oppression now cast her as toxic. But here's the contradiction. Hollywood loves a redemption arc. Could Meghan stage one? Could she spin her scandal into yet another story of survival, betrayal, and resilience? Some insiders thought she might try, but others warned. This time, the damage was too great. Offshore accounts and fraud allegations aren't the kind of gossip you brush off with a teary interview. Let's dig deeper into the reactions. One high-profile friend reportedly confided, "I told her years ago to be careful. The higher you climb, the more people want to see you fall." That's the kind of advice Meghan ignored. Because she believed her narrative, believed she could control the spotlight forever. And then came the media irony. Tabloids that Meghan once sued and condemned now had a field day. "Hollywood dumps Meghan," screamed headlines. Photographers who once fought for her smile now hunted for shots of her shame. Talk shows mocked her fall. Comedians made her the punchline of monologues. The Duchess who once lectured the world was now being laughed at. The emotional beats here cut deepest when you consider Meghan's own hunger for Hollywood acceptance. Remember, before Harry, she was a working actress. Suits was her big break, but she never reached A-list status. Marriage into royalty vaulted her into Hollywood's highest circles. But now, stripped of that royal halo and facing criminal allegations, the very industry she idolized had no use for her. And let's not forget the betrayal of silence. Because silence speaks louder than denial. When Serena doesn't defend her, when Oprah doesn't comment, when George and Amal Clooney, who once sat in the front row at her wedding, decline invitations to speak, it tells the world everything it needs to know. But the real shock came from one A-lister who decided not to stay silent. A figure close to Meghan, once considered part of her inner circle, allegedly revealed that they had warned her years ago about financial dealings. They claimed Meghan brushed it off, saying, "Everyone does it. It's not illegal if you know the right people." Do you see the contradiction? The woman who claimed to be victimized by institutions allegedly embracing the very shady practices those institutions were built on. And here's the question I'll throw back to you. Was Hollywood's silence betrayal or self-preservation? Because if Meghan's offshore accounts were tied to other elites, then distancing themselves wasn't just about morality. It was about survival. The build-up from here is crucial because Meghan's Hollywood isolation wasn't the end. It was the beginning of an avalanche. Her silence from former friends fueled the media frenzy, which in turn fueled leaks from investigators. The walls closed in, and Meghan was left with no allies in the very world she thought would save her. And the cliffhanger? That A-list figure who spoke out, who claimed they had warned Meghan, wasn't just a casual friend. They were one of her earliest champions in Hollywood, the one who helped her cross from actress to activist, from TV star to duchess. Their betrayal wasn't just personal. It was devastating. The moment Meghan's arrest made headlines, the media machine shifted into overdrive. This wasn't just another royal squabble or celebrity divorce. No, this was dynamite. A duchess accused of financial fraud, offshore accounts exposed, betrayal from within. The tabloids smelled blood, the broadsheets sharpened their pens, and social media became a gladiator arena where Meghan's reputation was torn apart in real time. The mini-hook here is simple. Once Meghan's carefully managed image slipped, the leaks poured in like a broken dam. Front pages screamed with ruthless headlines. From duchess to defendant, Meghan's millions in hiding, fraud and fall from grace. The very outlets Meghan once fought in court now rejoiced at the chance to plaster her downfall across every stand in Britain and America. It was poetic justice to her critics and a nightmare to her supporters. But here's where it gets darker. It wasn't just speculation or anonymous sources. Documents started leaking. Bank records, internal memos, even alleged emails between Meghan and her financial managers. These weren't vague rumors. They were receipts, each one painting a clearer picture of offshore secrecy. One leaked email allegedly showed Meghan questioning whether a transfer could be smoothed to avoid tax scrutiny. Another showed her pressing for absolute discretion. Whether real or doctored, the The media didn't care. The image was enough. The court of public opinion had its evidence, and Meghan was already guilty in their eyes. And then came the voice notes. Whispered recordings, supposedly leaked from inside Meghan's own circle, surfaced online. In them, a voice sounding eerily like Meghan's could be heard discussing funds and delays. The authenticity was never fully proven, but the damage was done. Clips went viral. Talk shows played them on loop. Memes exploded across Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Suddenly, Meghan wasn't just accused. She was a meme, a symbol of hypocrisy. Now, think about the irony. Meghan and Harry's brand had been built on controlling their own story. The Oprah interview, the Netflix documentary, the memoir, every word carefully chosen, every shot perfectly lit. They had once outmaneuvered the press by speaking directly to the public. But in this moment, the press struck back with a vengeance. Every secret, every whisper, every scrap of leaked material became ammunition. And here's the twist. These leaks weren't random. They were targeted, timed, and devastatingly effective. Investigators would announce one discovery, and within hours, media outlets had exclusive documents backing it up. It was as if someone on the inside was feeding them, piece by piece, turning Meghan's scandal into serialized entertainment. Each day brought a new twist, a new leak, a new humiliation. The emotional punches kept coming. Meghan's past speeches about charity and authenticity were replayed side by side with allegations of money hidden offshore. Clips of her insisting on honesty were contrasted with leaked bank statements. The narrative wasn't just collapsing, it was being shredded systematically for the world to see. And what about Harry? Headlines began to shift. Did Harry know? HW on the accounts. Prince in the shadows? The leaks dragged him in too, whether or not the evidence was solid. Imagine his anguish, already torn between love and loyalty, now watching as his own name was dragged into the scandal by headlines he couldn't stop. But here's where the contradictions get sharper. Meghan had sued tabloids for years, winning some cases, claiming they had ruined her life. Yet now, those same tabloids were publishing material that seemed bulletproof, leaked from somewhere close, somewhere intimate. And that raised the biggest question of all. Who was feeding them? Because this wasn't random paparazzi intrusion. This was deliberate. The precision of the leaks suggested coordination. Someone with access to Meghan's private world was serving her up to the wolves. And here's where the paranoia kicked in. Meghan allegedly raged in private, convinced that someone she trusted, someone in her inner circle, was selling her out. Was it a friend? A staffer? A relative? Or worse, was it Harry himself, quietly cooperating with investigators, trying to protect his children by distancing himself from her? The media frenzy turned Meghan's scandal into the world's favorite soap opera. Every day was a new episode. Every headline a new cliffhanger. The Duchess, who once weaponized the media spotlight, now found herself consumed by it. And the cliffhanger? Among the leaks was a document so shocking it froze commentators mid-sentence. A ledger that didn't just list Meghan's alleged accounts, but included the initials of another royal. If that ledger was real, Meghan's scandal was no longer just Meghan's. It threatened to expose someone in the monarchy itself. And that revelation? That was the story the media had been waiting for. The arrest was dramatic. The leaks were damning. But when the dust settled, one question loomed over everything. What does the law actually say? Because public opinion is a trial of emotion, but real justice is a trial of evidence. And this was the stage where the world turned to the legal experts, the lawyers, the financial crime analysts, the prosecutors who could cut through the noise and explain what Meghan Markle was truly facing. The mini-hook here is chilling. Fraud isn't gossip, it's prison. Television screens filled with stern faces of barristers, attorneys, and former prosecutors breaking it down for audiences. Offshore accounts in themselves, they explained, aren't illegal. Thousands of wealthy individuals use them to shield assets, reduce taxes, and manage estates. But what makes them criminal is intent. The deliberate concealment of money, false declarations, tax evasion, money laundering. And according to investigators, the evidence against Meghan suggested just that, concealment. One expert described it bluntly. If these documents are authentic, Meghan isn't looking at fines. She's looking at felony charges. This isn't civil law. This is criminal law. Another compared it to the Panama Papers scandal, where world leaders were disgraced, and corporations destroyed. And now, a duchess stood accused of playing in the same league. And here's the irony. Meghan had once been vocal about fairness, about justice. Yet legal experts highlighted how her alleged actions undermined those very ideals. If true, she wasn't just hiding money. She was dodging the very system she claimed oppressed her. The buildup grew more intense as analysts compared her case to others. They cited Bernie Madoff, who built an empire of lies. They referenced Martha Stewart, who spent time in prison for insider trading. They even pointed to Al Capone, brought down not by violence, but by tax evasion. The message was clear: powerful people can and do go to prison, and Meghan wasn't immune. But the legal twists didn't stop there. Experts debated Harry's position. If his name, or initials, appeared in financial documents, could he be charged too? Could the prince who left his family for love now find himself in court alongside his wife? Some said yes. Others argued Harry might plead ignorance, painting himself as yet another victim of Meghan's alleged deception. But either way, the possibility of Harry facing charges kept the public glued to their screens. And what about extradition? Meghan lives in the United States, but her accounts spanned multiple countries. Could she be dragged across borders to stand trial elsewhere? One American attorney explained that international fraud cases often involve cooperation between nations. If British or European authorities press charges, Meghan could be extradited to face trial overseas. Imagine that. An American duchess, once hailed as a royal revolutionary, sitting in a courtroom in London, facing the crown she abandoned. The symbolism alone would be devastating. The emotional punch here is undeniable. Meghan once used the law to fight back, suing tabloids, demanding retractions, winning settlements. But now, the law had turned on her. The same courts she once weaponized were now weapons against her. And the public, who had once debated her victimhood, now debated her guilt. But let's not forget the contradictions. Meghan's defenders claimed the charges were exaggerated, that offshore accounts are common, that she was being targeted because of who she is. One sympathetic commentator even said, if Meghan's name wasn't Meghan Markle, this wouldn't even be a story. But the legal experts fired back. Fame doesn't shield you, it magnifies you. And the bigger the name, the bigger the fall. Then came the chilling question. What kind of sentence could Meghan face if convicted? Some estimates suggested years in prison, plus millions in fines. Others painted scenarios where she might strike a deal, exchanging names, revealing bigger players in the network to save herself. Imagine the irony of Meghan, who once accused the royals of betrayal, now betraying her own allies to reduce her sentence. The courtroom sketches added fuel to the fire. When the first pre-trial hearing was held, artists captured Meghan seated stiffly, eyes downcast, looking nothing like the glamorous Duchess of magazine covers. Those images spread like wildfire, searing themselves into the public imagination. The Duchess, reduced to a defendant. And here's the cliffhanger. Because while experts debated Meghan's guilt or innocence, one shocking detail emerged from the prosecution's files, a coded reference to a trust account allegedly linked to a senior royal. If prosecutors pursued that lead, Meghan's trial wouldn't just be about her. It would be about the monarchy itself, through tears. That's how Meghan reportedly tried to frame her first public defense. A trembling voice, a shaky hand brushing back hair. A woman who had once declared to Oprah that she was silenced, now insisting she was being set up, hunted, targeted by powerful forces that wanted to destroy her. The mini-hook here is sharp. Meghan wasn't just defending herself against fraud charges. She was rewriting the narrative once again. Her side of the story began with a familiar refrain. She insisted she was innocent, that the accounts weren't hers, that her name was being exploited, that the documents had been manipulated. In her version, this wasn't a financial scandal, it was revenge. Revenge from the monarchy she had dared to challenge, revenge from institutions she had exposed, revenge from enemies she had made along the way. And think about it, this was classic Meghan. From the start, she has always presented herself as the outsider, the victim of a hostile system. First the palace, then the press, and now, she claimed, the prosecutors. The irony is staggering. A woman accused of concealing millions positioning herself once more as the one being persecuted. But here's the emotional twist. Meghan didn't just say she was innocent. She painted her innocence as part of a larger cause. She hinted at racism, at misogyny, at the dangers of powerful institutions silencing a woman who dared to break free. To her loyal supporters, this rang true. They remembered the Oprah interview. They remembered her struggles in the royal family. They wanted to believe her again. And yet, the facts loomed large. The documents, the transfers, the leaks. Experts lined up to dismantle her claims. But Meghan doubled down. She said she had been set up, that people she trusted had betrayed her, that even Harry had been fed lies to turn him against her. Can you feel the desperation? A woman clinging not just to her freedom, but to her marriage, her children, her carefully crafted identity. The build-up grew heavier when Meghan tried to turn the scandal into a morality tale. She said powerful elites feared her voice, feared her influence, feared the platform she and Harry had built. That this wasn't about fraud, it was about silencing her once and for all. Do you see the contradiction? Meghan, accused of hiding money in secret, painting herself as the truth-teller silenced by shadows. And here's where the emotional beat hits hardest. Because Meghan's plea wasn't just to the courts, it was to the public. She needed the world to believe her. She needed Hollywood to remember her charm, her allies to rally, her fans to scream injustice. She needed sympathy more than ever. But sympathy, this time, was fractured. Some believed her, clinging to the narrative of a woman wronged. Others rolled their eyes, calling her performance manipulative, her tears rehearsed. The court of public opinion was no longer united. It was divided. And yet, Meghan had one final card to play: love. She said she did everything for her family, that every decision she made was to protect Harry and the children, that if mistakes were made, they were made out of fear, not malice. Imagine her voice, trembling as she said, "I only wanted to keep my children safe." It's powerful. It's heartbreaking. It's manipulative or genuine, depending on where you stand. But it was Meghan's attempt to flip the script one more time. And then, the recordings surfaced. Leaked recordings, authenticated by experts, allegedly featured Meghan's voice discussing transfers, fees, and discretion. Suddenly, her cries of being set up clashed against cold, hard evidence. The contradiction was unbearable. Was Meghan lying all along? Or had someone gone to extraordinary lengths to fabricate her downfall? And here's the cliffhanger. The most damning recording didn't just feature Meghan's voice. It included another, familiar voice in the background. A voice investigators believe they recognized instantly. A voice belonging to someone shockingly close. If that recording was authentic, Meghan's defense wasn't just crumbling. It was obliterated silent. That's how Harry appeared in the days that followed Meghan's arrest and the avalanche of evidence. The prince who once thundered against the press, who once shouted in defense of his wife, now stood mute. His face pale, his shoulders heavy, his words absent. Silence, in this case, spoke louder than fury. It was the silence of a man collapsing under the weight of betrayal, humiliation, and doubt. The mini-hook is brutal. Harry's silence wasn't indifference, it was devastation. Imagine the torment. Harry, who sacrificed his royal life for Meghan, who turned his back on his brother, his father, and the entire institution of the monarchy, now staring at documents and recordings that suggested the woman he trusted most had deceived him. For a man who lost his mother to tragedy, who vowed never to let history repeat itself, the sting must have been unbearable. Was Meghan his Diana, or his undoing? Let's rewind. From the start, Harry has defined himself by loyalty. To his mother's memory. To Meghan. To the idea of love above duty. He gave interviews where he declared, "Whatever Meghan wants, Meghan gets." He fought with courtiers, railed against the palace, and isolated himself from the very family that raised him, all in the name of devotion. But now, that devotion looked less like a badge of honor and more like a chain dragging him down. The middle of this tragedy unfolds in whispers. Reports suggest Harry shut himself away in Montecito, refusing to take calls from friends. Some say he cried openly, torn between defending Meghan publicly and questioning her privately. Others claim he raged, smashing glasses, demanding answers she couldn't or wouldn't give. And then there were the children, Archie and Lilibet, innocent, unaware, caught in the shadow of scandal. For Harry, the thought of them growing up branded by their mother's alleged crimes was unbearable. He had promised Diana's fate would not touch his family. Yet here it was, not paparazzi this time, but courtrooms and fraud charges threatening to scar his children forever. Let's pause for a direct question. What would you do in Harry's place? Would you cling to your wife, believing her innocence against all odds? Or would you pull away, protect your children, and salvage what little credibility you had left? The contradiction gnawed at him. Harry had once called the media cruel, yet now it was the media that seemed to be telling the truth. He had once accused his family of betrayal, yet now it appeared Meghan was the one betraying him.